Hey folks, how's it going? So if this is our first time meeting, nice to meet you. My name is Jay. On this channel, we do amplifier reviews, speaker reviews, hi-fi component reviews, but most importantly, music and audio is our passion on this channel. So if you share the similar type of passion, then please feel free to subscribe. I encourage you to subscribe and like the videos. Now, if you do like the videos, then I appreciate it very much. It helps us a lot. So I thank you and appreciate you for doing that right now. Now, if you see me before, this is not our first time meeting, then thank you for coming back. Thank you for being a supporter and a subscriber. Now, today we're taking a look at an integrated amplifier called the Willsenton R8, and this is a Chinese integrated tube amplifier. And a lot of people have been asking me about this amplifier because I've been mentioning it in my speaker reviews. Now, today is the day I actually review it. So I'm pretty excited to tell you guys about this amplifier. Now, this integrated amplifier is a very special amplifier because, let me tell you the price for this right now. Is $770 USD. Now, there is a shipping cost to it, but I'm assuming that it will be still under $1,000. So given that it's still under $1,000, this is a very good integrated amplifier. Now, there is the KT88 tube that you see here is actually the price of $770 before shipping. And with the EL34 tubes, if you choose to go that way, then it is $60 less. So it will be $710 instead of $770. So definitely, it is incredible for the value. Now, we'll talk about the some of the specifications and we'll get into the sound quality of this integrated amplifier. Now, with the KT88 tubes, it is 25 watts per channel in trialed working state and 45 watts per channel in ultra-linear working state. And with the EL34 tubes, it is 25 watts per channel in trialed working state and 40 watts per channel in ultra-linear working state. Now, you may be asking, what's the difference between the trialed and the ultra-linear working state? Well, there's subtle sound differences when it comes to different modes, which is what I appreciate about this amplifier. But most importantly, the output tubes are being used, the KT88 tube and the EL34 tube, and it is also interchangeable with the 6550 tube, which are all common output tubes in the tube world. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with tubes, the KT88, EL34, and 6550 are commonly used in tube amplifiers, and also in guitar amplifiers. Now, guitar amplifiers use KT88 tubes a lot, as well as EL34s, and in a lot of cases, 6550. Tongsil K6550 was very famous when it came to guitar amplifiers. So they're very natural at creating string instruments and that of alike. Now, I know this because I play guitar. Now, when it comes to the amplifier itself, the output power is very deceiving. The maximum output power at ultra-linear working state is 45 watts per channel and 25 watts per channel at trialed. Now, that seems like not a lot. It's all under 50 watts. However, let me just tell you, with all the speakers that came into review, I never had to crank it up past 50. In fact, I never had to go to 50. It was always under 50. So it's probably a high gain design. So this means that this is probably have no problem driving your speakers whatsoever. Now, this is true with hard to drive speakers as well. CAF-LS50 is rated for 85 dB in sensitivity, and some of those speakers that are hard to drive or demanding, I still didn't have to crank to 50. It was always below 50. So this is probably a high gain design, so I can almost guarantee you that it will drive your speakers without a problem. Now, this is a tube amplifier, so tube wattage is inherently different from a solid state wattage, and some may debate, it is not actually more powerful, yada yada yada. But tube amplifiers tend to distort in a different way when you crank to higher volumes, which is actually a pleasant distortion rather than more unpleasant, like solid states. Now, that is if you even ever get to that. I don't think you will ever need to get to that with this amplifier. This amplifier, I never needed to crank up past 50. Like I said, it's probably a high gain design. Now, if you see here, you're going to see very big EI transformers, and I think they're good quality. Now, with this being said, this is really easy to bias. The Marantz AP is what comes to mind, and the Marantz AP I appreciate it very much because it was easy to bias. Now, for those of you that don't know what biasing is biasing in the tube output tube is basically to adjust the voltage that is going into the tube to basically sum it up. So to do this, sometimes you have to actually go into the amplifier, open it up, or sometimes you have to do it in a manual way, which is very not ideal for the end user. Now, when it comes to people that are inexperienced or wants convenience, the Marantz AP was a step above everyone else because it was easy to bias. It had a meter which told you the bias right off the bat in the front, and it also had little screws where you can actually adjust the bias and see the meter appear. Now, with this being said, this is actually even easier to use and it works in a similar way. Now you see the meter in the front. Now this is not a voltmeter or wattage meter. This is a bias meter. So you take a look at this, and then here you see V1, V2, V3, and V4 on the output tube amplifiers. So for example, if you're looking at the V1, then you have a switch which you can pull down to the V1, and then you'll see the actual bias on the meter. And then there's little screws that is also labeled V1 on the top of the chassis, and you put that, you go back and forth and try to adjust the bias so that the bias is in the middle of this meter right here. And then your bias is done. And you do this for all the 4 tubes, and you only need to do this once unless you change to a different tube on this integrated amplifier. Now, when you do change to a different tube, there's 2 choices on this integrated amplifier. On the back, you have the EL34, and then you have the KT88. So you have to change the switch on the back so that you have the correct settings for whatever tube you're using. So it is very easy to use and very easy to figure out. And even if you don't know how to use it from the very beginning, it could be very fun to find out. And also the manual tells you how to do this. Now, if you have no idea of how to do this, even after watching this video, you can always message me. You can ask around. It is very easy to do. In fact, it is one of the easiest ways of biasing a tube amplifier. Now, this also assures you that the correct voltage is going into each of the output tubes. And this is very important because at the end of the day, if you have different voltages going into each of the tubes, then one channel may burn out faster than the other, and then therefore you will have a channel imbalance. So it is very important to bias your tubes. So here it is made very easy, and it's very assuring that you can actually see it with a meter in the front. So there is 4 inputs and a 4 ohm tap and an 8 ohm tap speaker connection. So if your speaker is 4 ohms, then you will connect to the 4 ohms. If your speaker is 8 ohms, then you will connect to the 8 ohm tap. And it only has 4 inputs. It doesn't have any outputs. So that is a little bit of a bummer. That means you can't use this as a preamplifier, but that's okay. Given the price point, I think that's just fine. Now, when it comes to the selector, this is to select whatever input you're on. Now, it does come with a nice remote, very nice metal remote, and you can change the volume, you can change the inputs, you can do everything with it except for turning off the amplifier or turning it on. That you have to do it manually. You have to go up to the amplifier and turn it on and off with this knob right here. Other than that, it is very self-explanatory, very easy to use, and I think it's to the end user very, very friendly for a tube amplifier. Now, when it comes to sound, that's when it gets really interesting, and I'm very excited to tell you they are different because there's the EL34 tube, KT88 tube, and then there's the triode and ultralinear working state. Now, to make it very simple, the overall sound signature of this integrated amplifier is tubey, but also clean at the same time. It's not overly dark, nor is it overly shadowed, or nor is it, kind of like muffled in any way. It is very clean and crisp, and at the same time, it has the characteristics of a tube amplifier, especially in the mid-range and the high frequencies. Now, the bass performance is also very impressive for a tube amplifier. Now, when it comes to the difference between the EL34 tubes and the KT88 tubes on this integrated amplifier, both on the triode and ultralinear working state, the EL34 tube is going to sound softer, it's going to be easier, it's going to be easier going. The string instruments are going to sound more natural and sound more soft and sweet on the top end. That's the character of the EL34 tubes on this integrated amplifier, while the KT88 is going to have a little bit more balls, have a little bit more balls to sound, a little bit more grippy in the bottom end, but it's still going to retain a lot of the tube characteristic in the mid-range, that kind of mid-range magic and high frequency extension is all going to be there. Now in trial working state, generally speaking, with both tubes, the EL34 and the KT88, you're going to get a more softer sound and softer presentation. So this is going to be very good for vocals and string instruments. It's going to sound more natural, it's going to sound more tubey, and it's going to sound a lot more easygoing on your ears. Now when it comes to the ultra-linear mode is going to actually have more balls to the sound. It's going to be a little bit more gutty and a little bit more grippy in the bottom end, while still retaining some of that characters that I'm talking about in terms of strings and musicality of a tube amplifier in the mid-range and the high frequency. So overall speaking, EL34 with the triode is going to be the softest sounding. The KT88 with the triode is going to be the next softest sounding. And then we're going to have the EL34 with the ultra-linear sounding a little bit more ballsy. And then KT88 with the ultra-linear sounding even more ballsier and even more grippier in the bottom end. Now talking about the individual elements, when it comes to the bottom end with the KT88 tube, I really digged it. Even with the EL34 tube, I was very impressed by the pace and the speed of the bass, as well as the fullness in the bass region. Now with a lot of integrated tube amplifiers, the problem I have is the mid bass region, where it gets a little bit too gutty and too much. Just a little bit too much over the top when it comes to the production of the mid bass region, making everything sound a little bit more bloated and too warm. With this integrated amplifier, you're not going to get that. In fact, what you're going to get is actually a perfect amount of that kind of mid-bass energy, as well as the extension into low frequency, and the amount of speed is going to be pretty darn good and pretty fast for a tube amplifier in this case. Now, is it going to be as fast as a solid state? No, but it's going to get pretty darn close. In fact, if you put to an A/B test, a lot of the people won't even notice the difference between the bass response, especially with this integrated amplifier. Now, when it comes to the mid-range, that is where it's going to shine. This is a tube amplifier. It is going to be amazing in the mid-range. The strings is going to be natural, and I know because I play guitar, saxophones, vocals, drums, every instrument is going to sound a lot more natural than a typical solid-state amplifier. Now, even given the price point, this integrated amplifier is amazing because it is matching up to a lot of the tube amplifiers that I've tested in the past, and it checks off a lot of the lists that I'm looking for when it comes to a tube amplifier specifically. Now, so the mid-range, the vocal is going to be all great. Now, one thing that separates this integrated tube amplifier from other tube amplifiers I've tested in the past is that some of the tube amplifiers, yes, they're holographic, but that kind of smidges the imaging, and it's really hard to get a pinpoint imaging in a lot of the cases with the speakers. Now with this tube integrated amplifier, what you're going to get is actually a pretty darn good imaging and good separation, even despite the fact that there is no lack of holographicness. You're still gonna get that kind of tube characteristic holographic presentation in the mid-range with beautiful vocals as if it's a live recording, but you're still gonna get imaging and great separation without any kind of smear or smidge to the actual imaging, which I think is very, very good, and it takes a lot to make an integrated amplifier that's tube to sound like that. Now, when it comes to the high frequency, it's gonna be very interesting because this is a character that a lot of people don't appreciate about the tube amplifier. With the tube amplifiers, what you're gonna get is a very sweet and very tingly and very nice sweet presentation in the high frequency. And what I mean by this is that it is open sounding. It makes your speakers sound more open than they really are, and it's going to sound a lot more extended in the high frequency and with a little bit of twinkle and taste to it. Now, a lot of people call this like sparkle, and that's what I think is the right presentation here. But all in all, it makes your speakers sound more open and sound more airy. And that's what is really appreciated about a good tube integrated amplifier. Now, talking about some of the competition out there in terms of tube integrated amplifiers or tube amplifiers in general that I've tested in the past, some tube amplifiers just sound too modern. So they don't sound all that tubey to me, and that's my biggest problem. They sound clean, but they don't sound tubey. So if I'm buying a tube amplifier, why am I buying a tube amplifier in the first place? Because I want that tube characteristic, because I want to have that kind of tubiness to the sound. That's why I buy a tube amplifier personally. So when a tube amplifier doesn't sound like a tube amplifier, but it's more so going for a solid state, I would rather buy a solid state because solid states are technically better than tube amplifiers if I'm looking for a solid state specifically. So the reason I'm buying tube amplifier is to buy tube amplifiers, and that's what I appreciate about this integrated amplifier, because even though it sounds clean, it has all the characteristics I'm looking for when it comes to tube amplifiers. That holographic mid-range, that extension and airiness in the top end, it has it. And it is a very big plus that the bass is actually very, very good for an integrated tube amplifier. And especially given the price point, I can't believe this. If someone told me this was a $2,000 or even a $3,000 integrated tube amplifier, I would believe it. And in fact, if this was made in North America or other notable brands, then it probably will be in that price category without a doubt. Now, given my expertise in the past few years of working in the industry, value is something that I've come to realize, and this integrated amplifier is really value. It speaks value to me. The value for the performance is incredible for this type of integrated amplifier. For $770 and with shipping under $1,000, it is an incredible deal for sure. And now talking about some of the real life pairings that I've done. So the Tecton Double Impacts was an incredible match with this integrated amplifier, and I think on the Double Impact review, I said that if I had to go back and change everything and keep only one system, it will be this integrated amplifier with the Double Impacts, and I could live with that. And I still stand by that. With this integrated amplifier with the Double Impact, it is just an incredible system that you can die for. Even with the Pendragon, I would imagine it to be a very good matching, but I didn't get to try that combination since the Pendragon is long gone. But even the low reference that I have here that is up for review very soon, paired fantastically with this integrated amplifier. Just practically any speaker that came in after this integrated amplifier came in, I paired with it and I played around with it. And vocals, the new Cora 826 that I reviewed, the Sound Artist that I reviewed, the Triart open baffle speakers that I have here, some of the Klipsch speakers, Bucard S400. In fact, a lot of the speakers that I have here, I don't think a single one is not a very good match with this. In fact, every single speaker I have here was at least a decent or actually a very good match with this integrated amplifier. And I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a sucker for tubes. But every time I switch to another amplifier, I keep coming back and switching it back to this integrated amplifier at the end of the day to finish off my listening session, just to enjoy that last part of it. So when I look at this integrated amplifier, yes, I'm giving it an award. It deserves it. It sounds really, really incredible. And when I look at the overall performance of things, despite the price point, it sounds really, really good. It doesn't lack in any of the categories, and it checks off all the list of a proper tube integrated amplifier, and it stretches above its performance and price point. So that is why I'm giving it an award. Now the caveat is that you are taking my word for it. This is shipping from China. You can't audition it. You can't hear it before you buy it, type of thing. But I almost guarantee you that for the most people out there, this is an incredible amplifier for each of the category and its performance. To get a amplifier that is above this performance, you will be easily spending $5,000, $8,000 in the real world here in North America. So I definitely urge you to try this out, and I still stand by my word. This is something that I would personally own in my old system. If I had to go all back and choose one system, it will be the Tecton Double Impacts and this integrated amplifier for now. We never know, it may change. So anyhow, enough of me rambling. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate you guys for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.